Sixers news, they are at camp, believe it or not. They have a preseason game next week. You can hear the game live on 97.3 ESPN. Paul Hudrick from 97.3 ESPN.com covers the Sixers, and he joins us now with a look at this Sixers team who are at camp and have a lot of interesting things going on, including some news today, Paul. We've heard a little bit about this, but apparently it is making the rounds again that James Harden wants out, and that if I can't get to Brooklyn, how about Philadelphia? Doc Rivers actually talked about it today. So where do we stand with the possibility of Harden in Philadelphia?
Well, it certainly looks like there's more and more smoke, right? Certainly than there were a few weeks ago. And to me, this situation more and more, and listen, I don't want to get anybody overexcited because it's, it's far from a sure thing or even close to that. But it's a little bit reminiscent of the Jimmy Butler situation, right? I mean, he clearly wants out. The contract situation is obviously very different. But, a star player wants out, not happy. James Harden is taking his sweet time getting into camp. We saw him partying in Atlanta and in Vegas. And, just showed up to camp, I think, today and got his testing out of the way for COVID. So it's clearly a situation where it's, it doesn't look pretty from the outside looking in. Like maybe there's some things going on the inside. The Rockets are kind of saying all the right things, and of course they're going to want a ransom for him. But it looks ugly from the outside looking in, and it does. It reminds me a little bit of that Jimmy Butler situation that we all remember from a couple of years ago.
All right, so if this was a possibility, because Doc Rivers said today, we like our team. Any rumors, they're not coming from us. So he's trying to assure everybody that this isn't coming from their side. So we know that they have been very committed to Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Do you see any deal getting done without including one of those two guys?
For James Harden, I do not, because when James Harden is like we talked about many times, arguably the greatest offensive player easily of the last decade. One of the greatest of all time when you're talking about the offensive end of the floor. And again, his contract, he's not going to be a free agent. He's still got a couple of years. He can opt out, I believe, after the 2022-23 season. So, they're not just going to give him away. So you're going to have to give to get. So me personally, I don't see a package that would be attainable without including a Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. And you look, that was a demand in the ESPN story that they want a franchise cornerstone and they want a bevy of picks. Now, the thing is with that, now Houston could just hold on to him, and that seems like it's a very strong possibility. But if you look at that package, what they would want, how many teams that are also contending can really offer that? Maybe the Miami Heat, if you're saying Tyler Hero in a package, maybe the Nuggets, if you're talking maybe Michael Porter Jr. in a package. But I don't see a package for the Sixers that would be attractive enough if they're not including Ben Simmons.
So at this stage, it just sounds like James Harden wants out. Here's the thing, though, Paul. Houston, they own him till the 2023 season, so he can say all he wants out. But it seems that Houston holds the cards here.
Well, definitely. I mean, that's the issue, right? For the Sixers, is that why does Houston have to trade him? They certainly don't have to. They can hold on to him. But again, harkening back to that Jimmy Butler situation, can it get to that point? Can it get ugly? Can it be, James Harden at a practice yelling at ownership or something like that? Yelling up at Tillman Fertitta or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how ugly it is right now on the inside, and I don't know if it's going to get any uglier. But if James Harden shows up and plays nice and says all the right things and gets along with John Wall, and maybe they win a few games or they play well together, whatever, maybe that makes this kind of go away. But it could also go the other way. It could be him and John Wall don't mesh very well. It could, maybe the team doesn't get off to a good start. Maybe him and Steven Silas don't really hit it off, as his new head coach. We'll see. So I think you're right in the sense that right now, Houston is, they don't have to do anything. They can hold on to him for as long as they like. But again, do you want it to get to a Jimmy Butler point? Do you want it to get to that point? And if I'm the Rockets, I'm going to hold out for as long as I possibly can. But you also don't want it to get to that kind of untenable level.
Looking at the 76ers on the court now, and I know it's hard to get an overall vibe via Zoom, but you did hear a bunch of people speak, and they are starting to practice. What is the vibe when they do speak on Zoom?
It's definitely positive. I mean, of course, as you would expect, right? It's training camp, so everyone's getting along. Everything's great. They have a new coach. They have a new front office. They have new players. Everything's wonderful. So, of course, that's kind of what the vibe has been, right? Very positive. And I think the biggest takeaways I have from listening to Doc Rivers, listening to some other guys talk, I would say look out for a lot more of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons in a two-man game, running more pick and roll, kind of playing off each other, which we saw at times. And funny enough, I know Brett Brown always referenced the Clippers game at home last year as a game where both of those guys played really well offensively, and they won that game, closed it out on the defensive end of the floor. So I'd say that's one big takeaway is you're hearing a lot about that, those two together, playing off each other more. Shake Milton has definitely been the darling of camp, it seems like. It seems like every person we've asked has singled out Shake Milton, including Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers really seems to be kind of over the moon for Shake Milton as kind of his sixth man in that role. Said today that Shake Milton looks way faster than he thought he had. Than he thought he was from far away. Beyond just shooting basketball, he's finishing at the rim really well. So, yeah, again, just a lot of positivity. Again, more positivity today because that trade finally comes, finalized and official. So that's what I would say. Mostly glowing optimism from the Sixers as of now.
Paul Hudrick, 97.3 ESPN.com. The Sixers are back at camp, and obviously they open up the preseason on, Wednesday night against Boston. How will we see Ben Simmons? I mean, I heard Doc say he's a facilitator, but he mentions the open floor. And then, of course, we hear, he's been working on mid-ranges and corner threes. And it's like, oh, my God, here we go again. But we know Doc says, I don't care if he shoots. So what kind of Ben Simmons do we anticipate seeing? Because if we see the same one, I don't know how much better this team can really be.
Yeah, that's going to be the big question, right? I mean, that's him. Like the biggest thing is always going to be. It all comes back to: is Joel Embiid in shape? Is Ben Simmons going to shoot? That's the question. It seems like we're going to ask ourselves forever until those things kind of happen. At least to the 100% capacity that they could. So I mean, with Ben, yeah, I kind of picture it almost similar to what he was doing at the end of last year that we didn't really get to see in the bubble. I see it being, if it's a miss, Ben Simmons is going to push the pace, or if it's a turnover, he's going to push the pace. He's going to look to get out in transition. I think he was either one or two in the NBA in assisted threes this year. I expect to see way more of that with Danny Green and Seth Curry in the lineup, and those guys kind of running in transition. They're both very good, hitting transition threes kind of on the wing there. So I definitely expect to see him plenty of that. But I would also, in the half court, you might see a little bit more of Seth Curry maybe running some point and running a pick and roll. You might, again, see more two-man game with him and Joel Embiid, kind of that they call it the snug pick and roll, which is kind of like a pick and roll in the post that's kind of tough to guard, especially depending on what the matchup is defensively. Now, are we going to see him shoot threes? Or are we going to see him take mid-range jumpers? I have no idea. I think everyone is guessing at this point. The only one that knows that for sure is Ben Simmons. I did see that Danny Green was quoted on a recent podcast saying that he's going to push him to shoot more. I know Sam Cassell, like you said, he's been working with him more. So hopefully that's kind of naturally woven in more to his game, but we're not going to know until we see it.
From the start of the season, what do you think Tyrese Maxey's role will be?
That's another one that's really tough to know right now just because, I mean, obviously first day in camp for him was today, did non-contact stuff because he did have a positive COVID test. But he said he's feeling good. He said he's ready to go. He'll do full contact stuff tomorrow. So he is, a little bit behind the eight ball, not a ton, but a little bit compared to some other guys that have been in camp. So that's certainly going to be a factor. But, his skill set is one that I think it's the reason, I mean, other than just the talent and the value at 21, a reason they drafted him is because he does things that other guys in this roster can't do. That's creating off the dribble, that's getting to the basket, finishing at the rim. So there can be a role for him if he is ready. I think defensively, compared to maybe some other rookies, I'm not really as worried about him. I think he can defend. I think he can defend ones and twos. I think he's willing to do it, and I think he showed at Kentucky that he'll take on tough matchups, and he can do that on the perimeter. It's going to matter, too, like, is Matisse Thybulle, how is he shooting the basketball? If Matisse Thybulle's really shooting well and he's still playing his customary defense, is how good Shake Milton looks. It's all going to depend. I think it's just going to be a ripple thing. Like Justin Anderson, how does Justin Anderson look? How does he fit in? So I think he's kind of in an advantageous situation with Maxey. I don't think there's a ton of pressure on him where he has to contribute right away, but I also think there is an opportunity that if he plays well, he can contribute.
It's going to be really interesting about the rotation and how deep they go here because obviously, that was one of the things. They had so many guys who were very similar in Brett Brown's rotation last year, especially after they made the trade. You get Alec Burks, you got Glenn Robinson, you had Matisse Thybulle, you had Ritter, you had so many similar pieces here. How deep does this team go this year? Is this a deep team or is that a concern?
No, I honestly think they're a deeper team when you look at, and I think you hit it on the head right there when you said kind of like similar guys like wing players. Now you have more maybe guard-oriented players where Shake Milton's going to have a big role from the outset. You're going to have Seth Curry. Danny Green is, again, probably an underrated defender, a pretty good defensive player. That's going to help everybody involved, maybe take some pressure off Ben Simmons. And then, to me, Ben Simmons' versatility is just like such a big weapon for this team as far as their depth. Because the guy can literally play 1 through 5. He can play all 5 positions on the court at any time. So when you have a player like that, you can mix pieces around. Even Tobias Harrison, his ability to maybe play, some wing. Yeah, I personally like him more at the 4, but maybe he can play a little wing, and that again adds to your versatility. So, and I think depth-wise, I think they're in pretty good shape. I guess I would like to see some more proven guys. We don't really know, is Shake Milton going to take a leap? Is Matisse Thybulle going to take a leap? Again, we don't know what we have, what's there in Maxey quite yet. So I would say maybe there's a little bit more questions, but I think there's more options and more varied options, more versatile options.
All right, I guess to put it in perspective, how prevalent of the rotation is Furkan Korkmaz? Because he was a high part of the rotation, and some would say that's part of your problem when he's that high in your rotation.
Yeah, right now, again, it's so hard to know, but Doc Rivers says that he sees him as being a big piece. This, again, could be coach speak. He was asked specifically about Furkan, and he said nice things about Furkan. We don't know how that's all going to shake out. There's no question that Furkan Korkmaz, when he's hot, he's hot. And he gave them a huge boost multiple times when he got really hot. But on the defensive end of the floor, he's a liability. He hurts them defensively. So, where is he right now? You figure he has to be behind Shake Milton, behind Matisse Thybulle. I don't know that for a fact, but I would, judging by their talent, I would say that he's behind them right now. But that doesn't mean, again, if he has a great camp, if he has a great preseason, maybe that changes. And I think it's going to be really fluid too. I think the team you see on opening night, the team that you see on the last day before the playoffs, I think it's going to look very different. I think Daryl Morey could possibly make another move for a more established bench guy. I think, some guys are going to be mixed in, again, depending on how Maxey develops and where he is. So I think it's going to be so fluid throughout the year. And I don't think Doc Rivers is going to be stubborn and say, hey, I need to play this guy, I need to play that guy. I think he's going to go with what is the best, rotation for the Sixers.
I think it's interesting. We're talking about these role players, and you have Mike Scott on the bench, who's this experienced veteran. Now, he had an underwhelming season last year, but if you think about the 4 position that he can play, you have Tobias there, and you have Ben. I feel like there's a spot for him maybe to come off the bench. And he did play 5 before if you wanted to go small ball, though Dwight Howard's presence might change that. What can you maybe expect from Mike Scott? He's an experienced veteran guy.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt to have a guy like Mike Scott coming off your bench who was, such a big piece for them a couple of years ago in the playoffs. He played with a bad foot and still played through it. Gave him some tough minutes, hit some big shots. Last year, he admitted today, last year was a down year. He didn't have a great year. When he showed to the bubble, his knee was bothering him. He thinks it was because of his weight. Said as he gets older, he wants to keep his weight down, which I think we can all kind of relate to that one. But yeah, to have. For me, looking at it right now, I think he's on the outside looking in of any type of rotation play. But to have a guy like that as like your 10th, 11th, whatever man, that's a pretty valuable guy to have who's been there before, who's hit big shots, who's played in the playoffs. It's a really nice insurance policy. It's great that he has a familiarity with Doc Rivers as well. So, yeah, Mike Scott is just, like I said, outside looking in at the rotation, but certainly a very nice insurance policy on the outside of that.
Paul Hudrick, at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. His podcast coming in for a landing, all things Sixers. And, of course, the Sixers open up the preseason on Wednesday night. You can hear that game right here on 97.3. Actually, it's Tuesday night against Boston, and you can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Paul, we'll catch up soon, pal.
Sounds good, Mike.
All right, Paul Hudrick, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. We'll get his take, of course, as the Sixers get ready for the Boston Celtics on Tuesday night. Can't believe Hoops is back, baby.